Hi Math 5-4 friends. This is the second lesson for Monday, March 23rd. I'm hoping you can see that written on my paper over the Monday. This is my yellow week 8 assignment sheet that you all have in your folder. I have done a video for lesson 97, so that will be loaded in Google Classroom for you to view. You should have already done your time test H for page 190 in your test and worksheet book and had your parents check that over for you and put in your time. If it was less than 5 minutes, you would put the time it actually took you, your number correct over your number complete, okay? So lesson 97 I have on my sheet is done because I've already done a video for that. This is starting for lesson 98, which is located on page 453 in your textbook, your big textbook. Okay, I'm going to start with that. It is dealing with geometric solids, lesson 98. So I'm going to start with my sheet of paper here. When I draw a circle or a square or a triangle, these shapes are all flat. They cover up some area on my paper, but they don't really take up space. Some people call them two-dimensional because they are just flat shapes on my paper. So today's shapes that we're going to deal with, like these guys have a length and a width here, but they don't take up any space. They don't come off the page at you. They are just flat on that page and two-dimensional. The shapes we're going to work with today actually take up space, and they're called geometric solids. Another word for them, some people call them three-dimensional shapes because they have depth and width and length. So I have some examples of those. There's a chart in your book on page 453 that shows you. I'm going to bring that chart onto the screen so you can see it. Let's see. So there's a chart here, this chart on page 453 that shows you the different solids. I was going to take and show you some examples. The first solid in that chart, if you're following along, is a cube. As we notice, this cube it's not just flat, it comes off my hand, or if I was to put it on my paper, it comes off my paper. It has depth and takes up space, okay? It's not just a flat cube. So that is a cube. And again, that's written in the chart on page 453 if you need to refer back to it, excuse me. The next one I'm going to show you, this blue one, is called a rectangular solid. As you see, it has rectangles on the sides. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 rectangles, and then the ends are squares. It also takes up space and is not flat to my paper. If we move on to the next one on that chart, it is a pyramid. This is something you've probably seen, all of these you've probably seen something like this before. But a pyramid, we all know, like in Egypt, they have the Great Pyramids. These pyramids have these sides that are triangles, and then the base of the pyramid, is a square. And again, it takes up space off my page. It is a three-dimensional, also called a geometric solid. The next shape, I'm going to move these guys a little bit out of the way, is a cylinder. A cylinder goes around the edges and has 2 circles on the bases of the cylinder. There are objects in real life that are like these shapes. A cylinder kind of reminds me of maybe a cup or a soup can or a Coke can or something like that. The next one on chart on page 453 is a sphere. We've all seen a sphere before. It's kind of a shape like a ball. If you play any sports, you probably have played with something that is sphere shaped. The last one on our chart that we're learning about today is a cone. See, it has this nice point, and the base of it is a circle. A cone we usually have seen upside down with ice cream on top of it before. So that is our cone shape. If we look at back at our cube, one thing that in our lives that is cube shaped like this would be a die or dice. Some people call them dice if you have two. If you just have one, it's called a die. So a cube shape would be a die. And we talked about a pyramid, and then the rectangular solid or rectangular prism. I think of like a box of cereal to represent that. I have a sheet that tells us some information about these shapes. Let me pull that sheet onto the screen here. And see, it tells us, for example, the sphere, and it gives you an example. I'm gonna post this sheet in Google Classroom for you. It gives you an example of what it looks like. And then it talks about something here called faces, edges, and vertices. Let's go through what that means. So when I go back to my cube. When I look at my cube and I look at it, the faces of my cube are these flat surfaces here. Each of these squares is a face. So my cube has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces. 6 flat squares that are called faces. There are points on my cube that are the edges, these lines where see a face meets another face. There's a line right here, and here, and here, and here. Those are called edges. So there's, on our cube, there are 12 edges. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, those are edges. The points where my edges come together and make this sharp point right here is called a vertex. Or if it's more than one, it's called a vertice. Vertices, excuse me, that's a hard word for me to say today. A cube has 8 vertices. Every place the edges come together in a point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I have to flip it over, 5, 6, 7, and 8. You do not have to memorize all of that. I'm going to bring that sheet back. This sheet, as you look at it, has all of that information written on it, and I'm going to provide this sheet for you in Google Classroom, and I would recommend you print it out and keep it in your binder. It tells you the name of the shape. Now you'll notice it calls it a rectangular prism or a triangular prism on here. In your book, it doesn't use triangular prism, so you can ignore that one completely. But the one that it calls rectangular prism, your book actually calls a rectangular solid. That's okay, it means the same thing. But it goes through each shape, like the rectangular prism here, and it tells us that it has 6 faces. So these flat surfaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces. And then it tells us about the edges, which are the places the faces come together, these long lines or short lines here. And then it tells us about the vertices, which are the places that the 2 edges come together to make a vertex. And since there's more than one vertex, it's called a vertices. Now, if you look at a cone, it's kind of unique. Let's see if I can get the cone. There we go. Here's cone. A cone says it only has one face, okay? One flat surfaced face. And if you look, the number of edges on a cone are 0, because there is no place for those faces to come together. The number of vertices, there's no pointy places where the edges come together and touch in a vertex. So there's 0 vertices on a cone. A sphere is unique, like slide up to here, because a sphere has no faces. It's just a big round ball, no edges, and no vertices. Okay, so this sheet will help you determine the numbers of faces, and it even has up at the top here, it has a reminder of what an edge is. The edge is where the two faces come together. It reminds you what the face is of the flat surface, and it reminds you what a vertex is, where the edges come together into a point. Okay, so that can all be used to help you with your geometric shape understanding and with your practice problems. Now I'm going to bring an example out of the book to show you. So these solids, we said, take up space. So when we look at an example together, I'm on example 3, which is on page 454, example 3. I thought we would go through this one together so that it would make sense, because you will have a problem like these in your homework, in your practice problems and in your homework, excuse me. The rectangular solid, and it's talking about this blue one right here, is made up of how many small cubes? So let's just look at this rectangular solid for a minute here. So this rectangular solid, if we were going to classify it, it would be a rectangular prism like this one. Okay, and so if we go back to this shape, it has individual cubes that it's made up of. So it looks like they stacked little cubes together to make a rectangular prism. Our job is to figure out how many small cubes there are. The way we start with that is, first let's count what we can see. We can see that there's, let me use my pen to point, that might be easier. There's 1 cube right here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cubes, okay? So that's this first layer. So we know there's 6 cubes in the first layer, and then if we look at the side here, we can see this is layer 1, which we just counted, and this is layer 2 behind it. So there's 2 layers of 6 cubes, or 6 times 2, which tells us there are 12 small cubes. And if we can't see all of them, we can see a lot of them, but we know that it is 6 cubes in front and 2 layers deep of 6 cubes. You could even make this with small cubes if that would make it make more sense for you. Okay, so in your practice problems, it's going to give you, I'm gonna bring those up for a minute. It's going to give you a shape in real life, like a basketball, a funnel, a shoebox, a soda can. It's going to give you that shape, and it's going to want you to name those objects. It's going to want you to use the name sphere, cone, cylinder, pyramid. It wants you to use the names of the shapes. Like I said, all of them match up, except you don't need triangular prism on here. So it's gonna, for example, if we were to do basketball together, A is basketball, and it says in problems A through D, name the shape of the object listed. So we have a basketball. Well, if we all know a basketball is round and about the shape of a sphere. So for A, your answer would be sphere. Okay, that's all you would have to do. So then it gives you pictures and asks you, what shape is that? What does the base look like? How many edges does it have? You can use this sheet, which will be located in Google Classroom, to help you with that. This problem G is like the example we just did together. You count the cubes you can see first in the front layer, and then you figure out how many layers there are using the side over here. Okay? So your practice problems for lesson 98, practice problems, are located on page 455. So you'll do your practice problems A through G, and then have your parents check your work. If you have any questions or you need any help, have your parents give me a call or text me or email me, and I can try to help you out through these. I will, again, that 3D shape, I call it a cheat sheet. I guess a reference sheet would be the proper way to call it. The 3D shapes reference sheet will be located in Google Classroom, and the proper names are located in your book on page 453. Can you see that? Okay. And so that is the end of lesson 98.